All right, they're starting to put it out there. They're starting to find ways to leave breadcrumbs and let it be known that we want Shedeur Sanders as the starting quarterback. There are Browns players who's letting it be known that number 2 should be the guy at the helm. They want him to have more than just an opportunity to win the job. They want him to have the damn job and have a legitimate shot to show his staying power. This is courtesy of Yardbarker NFL. Okay, Cleveland Browns news. Former Browns QB makes huge locker room claim about Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson.
The Browns thought they were entering a simple quarterback competition, but something behind the scenes is already shifting the entire narrative in a way nobody expected. Why are players quietly rallying around Shedeur Sanders before he even wins the job? What are they seeing in practice that is changing minds this fast? And if the locker room already has its guy, can the coaching staff afford to ignore it without risking everything unraveling before the season begins?
I agree that Deshaun Washington is going to be the day one starter.
Bro, we just started the segment, dog.
Bro, please
don't.
We really just started.
I don't agree with Rappaport's logic to get him there. Yeah. Deshaun Watson has played some bad games. Let's call it what it is. Like, I know Deshaun personally, you know what I mean? We've had some great conversations. He's been nothing but great to me. But he's had some bad games. Should he be the starter? Yes, because he's played at a higher level than Cleveland Browns quarterbacks have in the last 2 years. That's why he should be the starter. Should be a starter? Yes, because he's probably better today than a second-year Shedeur Sanders that has 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Will he be better than Shedeur in a year, 2 years? I don't know. But
something unusual is unfolding in Cleveland, and it has nothing to do with a last-second loss or a blown playoff opportunity, because this tension is building long before the first meaningful snap of the season is even played.
When you're talking about a young man who's dealt with the pressure, who had all the odds stacked against him last year, no reps basically in the preseason, didn't get any first-team reps before he became a starter. Before the week he became a starter, he wasn't even throwing to guys like Jerry Jeudy. So I think Shedeur Sanders should be that starter. He has the mental makeup, the confidence to get it done.
Outstanding message. That audio is from Yahoo Sports Daily. Great message. Do you know who the messenger is?
Who that was?
Yeah.
The RG3?
Well, I didn't know you knew that, but okay, fine. Yeah.
What makes it so compelling is not just the quarterback battle itself, but the fact that the people inside the locker room appear to be seeing something very different from the people making the final decisions.
Reports have indicated that veteran Deshaun Watson and not 2025 rookie Shedeur Sanders should be considered the favorite to win the Browns starting quarterback job later this summer. Former NFL signal caller and current analyst Robert Griffin III featured for the Browns 2016 during a recent appearance on Yahoo Sports Daily program. Griffin indicated that some Cleveland players may want first-year head coach Todd Monken to give Sanders more than just an opportunity to earn the QB1 gig, okay? Browns locker room believes in this QB amid Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson competition.
From the outside, the situation looks straightforward, as the Cleveland Browns appear to be preparing for a standard quarterback competition between Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders, with the veteran widely expected to have the inside track based on experience, contract, and status within the organization.
Team, who's the week 1 starter, Ian Rappaport, in Cleveland?
If I had to guess, and these are guesses,
yeah,
not reports.
Correct.
I always do this for the
Understood.
The aggregator. Guesses, not reports. My guess is Deshaun Watson.
I'll say that.
But that's money talks, right? No, because the money's paid already. That's different. You didn't. I mean, you did have to pay him years ago to get him, but that money's paid.
Right.
Here's why. Here's my argument. When he's been healthy, he's been for sure.
However, once you begin to examine what is being said behind the scenes, the entire narrative starts to shift in a way that raises serious questions about alignment within the team. The most revealing insight comes from Robert Griffin III, who has suggested that there are players within the Browns locker room who already believe that Shedeur Sanders gives them a better chance to win, which is not the kind of statement that typically surfaces unless there is a genuine divide in perception. This is not simply about potential or upside, but about trust, which is one of the most critical and fragile elements in any football team. Performance in practice, communication style, or simply the intangible presence that certain quarterbacks bring to a team. At the same time, the expectation that Deshaun Watson remains the likely starter creates a situation where the internal and external narratives are no longer aligned, which can quietly introduce tension into every aspect of team preparation. Players may continue to perform their roles, but subtle differences in energy, urgency, and engagement can begin to emerge when there is uncertainty about leadership at the most important position on the field.
Yeah, I think he'll start just because of the money. I don't know what Ian talking about. I think money does matter. If you're the owner, it's easy to say that when you're not spending that money. When you spend that money, you want to see some results. And also, see, this is what I'm saying. Like, some of these guys, I love a lot of these guys because I'm really friends with them, but he ain't watching tape. Anyway, you watch the tape telling me that Deshaun Watson was playing some winning football, though, right? Because I was cheering for Deshaun Watson. And I remember when they made that trade, I said, this is a great trade because he is that good. He is that special. And a lot of games, I'm thinking like, yo, who the hell is this playing quarterback? I've seen some crazy bad plays from Deshaun Watson with the Browns. So I don't think he's starting because he has a better chance to win at this point. No.
This is where the role of the coaching staff becomes particularly significant, especially for a head coach who is still establishing his authority and vision for the team. Todd Monken has made it clear that he values discipline, execution, and consistency, emphasizing his desire to eliminate mistakes and build a team that reflects his standards. Those principles are essential for any successful program, but they also require full buy-in from the players, which becomes more difficult to achieve if there is disagreement about who should be leading the offense. The challenge is not simply choosing the more talented quarterback. What makes this situation particularly delicate is the timing, as these conversations and perceptions are developing before the season has truly begun, which means they have the potential to shape the entire trajectory of the team. If a decision is made that does not align with the prevailing sentiment in the locker room, it can create an undercurrent of doubt that surfaces during moments of adversity, when teams rely most heavily on trust and cohesion. There is also the added complexity of expectations surrounding Shedeur Sanders, who, despite being early in his professional journey, appears to have already made a strong impression on his teammates. Players are often drawn to confidence and clarity, and if Sanders is demonstrating those qualities in practice and preparation, it would explain why some are eager to see him take on a larger role.
I like that message. I just don't think a lot of fans like the messenger because they think of Robert Griffin III playing quarterback poorly for us at the time. But let me point this out. Just because you played quarterback for the Browns, you weren't that great. It doesn't mean you can't talk Browns football, for crying out loud. I mean, we've had Brady Quinn on before, and Brady's a great guest. We've had Brian Hoyer on before, and Brian played quarterback pretty damn well for the Cleveland Browns. Just obviously we had drafted somebody else at the time, and Brian's obviously a great guest talking about it. You know, I think what he says is something that a lot of Browns fans hope, and I wanted to play it because there's so many damn people out there who are from the national perspective saying Shedeur ain't going to win this job, including Ian Rappaport on Rich.
However, placing a young quarterback in a starting position comes with its own set of risks, particularly in a league where defensive schemes are designed to exploit inexperience. The coaching staff must weigh not only the current sentiment within the team, but also the long-term development of the player and the broader goals of the organization. On the other hand, continuing with a veteran option in the face of internal skepticism can create a different kind of pressure, where every performance is scrutinized not just by fans and analysts, but by teammates who may already be questioning the decision. This dynamic can become increasingly difficult to manage, especially if early results do not meet expectations. Ultimately, the situation in Cleveland is not just about selecting a starting quarterback, but about establishing a clear direction and ensuring that everyone within the organization is moving toward the same goal. Without that alignment, even the most carefully team moving forward. In a league where success often depends on unity and shared purpose, the ability to bring together differing perspectives and channel them into a cohesive plan may prove just as important as any individual performance. The Browns have the talent to compete, but whether they can align their internal beliefs with their external decisions remains an open question that could define their entire season.
So why do you think there is kind of a disconnect in what local media is thinking versus what the national media is thinking at this point in the Browns quarterback race?
Well, I think when you get to the national perspective, it's more of a overarching theme. Like, it's like a bigger, like, you know, a wide lens view of the situation. And if you were to look at the wide lens view, I think one of the things that they're looking at is Deshaun Watson has a more extensive body of work. So it's easier for you to say, well, I remember when he was in Houston, I remember when he did this, and but the problem is, He said it perfect.
That unanswered question does not just linger in the background. It quietly shapes every decision that follows. Because once a locker room begins to form its own conclusions about leadership, those conclusions rarely disappear on their own. Instead, they tend to grow stronger with repetition, especially if the player earning that belief continues to reinforce it through practice habits, communication, and the way he carries himself in competitive situations. What makes this even more intriguing is how quickly perception can shift in professional football when a younger player enters the picture with momentum. Shedeur. At the same time, the situation surrounding Deshaun Watson becomes increasingly complex because he is not just another veteran competing for a role, but a quarterback whose presence carries expectations tied to both performance and investment. In most cases, a player in his position would benefit from a degree of stability and organizational backing, but that stability becomes harder to maintain when internal confidence appears to be wavering. This creates a delicate balancing act for the coaching staff, who must evaluate performance objectively while also managing the psychological dynamics of the team.
Deshaun Watson better than Shedeur Sanders?
He used to be.
What would have changed that?
The 5-year span that happened.
And the injuries, yeah, that all plays a factor. You don't play football for a while, you lose that momentum that you had. They're trying to recreate it, but you never know if you can get it back.
I feel like at that position, when you got talent like him, it just doesn't disappear overnight.
While you was sleeping, dreaming overnight, you popped your Achilles 3 times. That's major.
I'm back. If you depending on Shedeur for the first 3 weeks of the season and he doesn't pan out, you're gonna have to go backwards.
If Shedeur start the season off and 4 weeks you don't like it, you go to Deshaun, I don't really see that as going back.
Why wouldn't you?
If they lean too heavily on past credentials or external expectations, they risk overlooking the current reality inside the locker room. However, if they respond too quickly to internal sentiment without fully assessing long-term implications, they could expose a young quarterback to challenges that might have been better approached more gradually. The reality is that quarterback decisions are rarely made in isolation, as they influence everything from offensive identity to locker room culture. A team that believes in its quarterback tends to play with a different level of energy and cohesion, which can be difficult to quantify a shared vision. The Browns are not lacking in talent, but talent alone is rarely enough to overcome internal misalignment, particularly in a league where margins are often razor thin. As training camp progresses, every repetition will carry additional weight, because players will not only be evaluating performance, but also reaffirming or reconsidering their initial impressions. A well-executed drive in practice can strengthen belief, while a miscommunication or missed opportunity can reinforce doubt. Over time, these small moments accumulate into a broader narrative that influences how the team perceives its own potential.
Been kind of a quiet start to the week when it comes to the Shedeur news and really the OTA news in totality. Now, there's obviously a few videos coming out from the Browns, so we're gonna watch these as well as speak about the conversation that is the ever-growing competition between Shedeur and Deshaun. All three quarterbacks were there at the beginning of workouts, but have they been there the entire workout? That's been a question too, because it seems like Shedeur keeps getting in these videos, but we don't see Dylan Gabriel, we don't see Deshaun Watson as much. Now, what I do want to say, I don't want what happened last week. I don't want that.
The coaching staff, led by Todd Monken, will need to be especially attentive to these developments, because maintaining credibility requires demonstrating that decisions are being made with both awareness and intention. Players do not expect perfection, but they do expect consistency and fairness, particularly when it comes to determining who leads them on the field. If the perception emerges that decisions are being driven by factors unrelated to current performance or team chemistry, it can create a sense of disconnect that is difficult to repair. On the other hand, if the coaching staff is able to clearly communicate its reasoning and show that it is responsive to what is happening on the field, it can help bridge the gap between differing viewpoints. Another layer to consider is how external narratives can amplify the presence of a visible divide, can intensify that scrutiny in ways that are not always productive. For Shedeur Sanders, this environment presents both an opportunity and a challenge, because increased support from teammates can accelerate his rise, but it also raises expectations that must be met consistently. Young quarterbacks often face a steep learning curve, and while confidence is essential, it must be paired with adaptability and resilience in order to sustain success over time.
I think you kind of set it up pretty well there when you said, they're not as close to the situation as we are locally. And from a national perspective, I think a few things go into why they are saying Deshaun Watson can be the starter. I think they do remember when he was healthy and when he was balling out for the Houston Texans. I think the money for national people are going to always be a part of the conversation. On my way into work today, I heard LaShawn McCoy talking about Deshaun Watson should start because they owe him money, or Jimmy should get something else out of it. And so those are going to always be talking points. And besides, what is it, April?
For Deshaun Watson, the situation requires a different kind of response, one that focuses on reaffirming trust through performance and leadership. In many ways, this is a test of his ability to navigate adversity within his own team, which can be more difficult than competing against opposing defenses. Regaining confidence is not simply about statistics, but about demonstrating reliability in critical moments and reconnecting with the players around him. The broader implication of this competition is that it forces the Browns to confront their identity as a team, which extends beyond any single position. Are they a team that prioritizes experience and established roles, or are they willing to adapt quickly based on emerging dynamics? The answer to that question will influence not only the quarterback decision, but also how the team approaches future challenges. As the preseason unfolds, there will likely be moments that appear to clarify the situation, whether through standout performances or visible struggles. However, what ultimately determines long-term success? The Browns are in a position where they must balance patience with urgency, because while development takes time, competitive windows in the NFL can be surprisingly short. Every season carries its own set of opportunities and risks, and decisions made in the present can have lasting consequences for the future.
I'm not saying Deshaun Watson's not there. All I'm saying is I'm seeing Shedeur. I'm seeing Jerry Jeudy. I'm seeing the age of Dylan Sampsons, Harold Fannins. I'm seeing everybody. But I'm not seeing the other quarterbacks. Now, is it for clicks, or is the social media sending a message through the media? I don't know. You tell me.
In this sense, the quarterback competition becomes a reflection of the organization's broader philosophy, revealing how it navigates uncertainty and manages competing priorities. The ability to make a clear, confident decision while maintaining the trust of the locker room is what separates stable teams from those that struggle with inconsistency. It is also worth noting that locker room sentiment is not static, as it can evolve based on performance, communication, and results. A player who earns trust early must continue to reinforce that trust, while a player facing skepticism has the opportunity to change perceptions through consistent execution and leadership. This dynamic ensures that the situation remains fluid, even as narratives begin to solidify. Ultimately, the Browns are facing a scenario that tests not only their roster, the true measure of the team will begin to emerge, not just in terms of wins and losses, but in how effectively it has aligned its internal beliefs with its external decisions. In a league where unity often determines success, the ability to resolve this situation with both confidence and transparency may prove to be one of the most important factors in shaping the Browns' season.